on CBS 4 News In Depth, tracking a man-made environmental disaster and its aftermath.
The goopy blue-green algae blooms have turned many southeast Florida waterways into a thick, poisonous soup.
Foul-smelling algae blooms from nutrient-rich water released from Lake Okeechobee.
Environmentalists blaming U.S. sugar for what they're calling an ecological disaster.
This was an algae bloom that could be seen from space, prompting a political crisis here in Florida for some of the state's most powerful business interests.
How many lobbyists did you have on that bill?
We had a few.
From the very outset of this man-made tragedy, emotions ran high.
Try to sell a waterfront home when your vista is green, stinky slime on the water. Good luck being a realtor in that environment.
I'm going to catch hell for this, but it won't be the first time. I'm sorry, but when you're living on the intercoastal waterway in the state of Florida, and your $300,000 boat has got a little algae bumping up against it, I really can't shed a tear.
How did this happen? CBS 4's Jim DeFede spent more than a year tracing the algae bloom and discovering along the way how the economically ravaged communities around the lake are caught between competing interests.
Oh, I think people don't understand why anybody would want to live here. I think they think it's the worst place on the face of this earth.
We searched for answers in the swamps of South Florida, the halls of the Capitol in Tallahassee, and right on up to Washington.
Do you think the farming community has been bad for the Everglades, bad for Florida?
I don't think intentionally, but clearly there are pollutants, there's pesticides. I mean, those aren't good things, you know, for a natural environment to exist, or for the species that exist within that natural environment. It kills stuff.
I believe we can do a lot to restore the Everglades, and at the same time not have to wipe out the Glades communities.
The minute we lose the ability to have fresh water in South Florida, the economy is gone. Jobs are gone, let alone our water supply.
And we examine the successes and the failures behind the efforts to restore the River of Grass.
Was this an area of friction between you and your brother, who was president at the time?
A little bit, yeah.
It's a miracle, really, there's any Everglades left, if you think about it. But what is there is certainly worth fighting and worth raising hell about.
The Everglades, where politics, money, and race collide.
To find the source of the algae bloom, you drive north out of Miami, along State Highway 27. After a little more than an hour, you're in Palm Beach County. This is western Palm Beach County, farm country, where every year $1 billion in lettuce, sweet corn, green beans, radishes, and sugarcane is produced. And in the heart of all this farmland is Lake Okeechobee. In order to understand precisely how Lake Okeechobee fueled last year's toxic algae bloom, you have to recall that in late 2015 and early 2016, a heavier than expected rainy season caused the water level in Lake Okeechobee to rise to nearly 17 feet. Keeping the water in place, the Herbert Hoover Dike, a 143-mile earthen berm that encircles the lake. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which operates the 70-year-old dike, determined in 2005 it was on the verge of collapse. And more than a decade later, it remains in a dire state, as Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Reynolds explained recently to the Florida State Senate.
That dam is not safe for the people that live and work around the lake.
For the 40,000 people at risk who live just south of the dike, the threat seemed all too familiar. In 1928, a hurricane slammed into Lake Okeechobee, causing the lake to overflow its banks and flood the nearby towns of Belle Glade, Pahokee, South Bay, and Clewiston. As many as 3,000 people were killed. Photos from the Florida archives illustrate the aftermath. Homes destroyed, bodies lining the street, rows of makeshift coffins. When the most recent problems with the Herbert Hoover Dike were discovered, the Corps initiated emergency repairs, but the pace has been gradual, with Congress slow to fund the $1.6 billion project. As of now, the repairs are not expected to be complete until 2025.
Where Washington let us down, I would say, is the complete ineptitude of the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, you can't make it up. Their systems are horrible. The managing of Lake Okeechobee, the dike, that's still going on. I mean, that's a serious issue that needs to be fixed.
J.P. Sasser was the longtime mayor of Pahokee, which sits in the shadow of the dike and will be wiped away if it were to breach.
I don't blame the Army Corps. They're the Army. They follow orders. You go find out who's giving them the orders, and you say, give them the goddamn order to finish the dike, and then fund it. I work very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers. All they care about is doing their job the best to their ability. But they're caught constantly with political infighting. They're told 1 minute to do this, they're told the next minute to do that. Fund the people, put the money where it needs to go, and let the people do their job and stay out of the damn middle of it.
Hamstrung, the Corps opted instead to establish special rules for Lake Okeechobee, designed to keep the lake artificially low, thereby reducing the chance it would fail. So as the 2016 rainy season hit and the lake rose, the Corps opened the floodgates in 2 spots. Here at Moorhaven, where the water would be discharged west into the Caloosahatchee River and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico, and here at Port Mayaca, where the lake water would be sent into the St. Lucie estuary and out towards Stewart.
It's the single biggest act of pollution that occurs in this country is when they open the floodgates at Lake Okeechobee. I mean, it's a ghastly thing, and it's a horrific thing to see, and that's sort of what brought a lot of this to the head, I think, in the last couple of years.
Scientists estimate there may be as much as 60,000 tons of phosphorus sitting on the bottom of the lake. Sewage from septic tanks and lawn fertilizer, as well as the runoff from the cattle ranches and orange groves, all flow down the canals and lakes along the Kissimmee River and are dumped untreated into Lake Okeechobee.
Everything from Orlando south just flows into that lake like an open sewer.
In the 1990s, Mitchell Berger was an advisor to then Vice President Al Gore, as well as Florida Governor Lawton Chiles.
The lake's going to die. Unless we deal with the lake right away, it's going to die. So when the lake dies, South Florida is in a lot of trouble.
Phosphorus, however, is not the concern of the Army Corps of Engineers.
So they look at the levee and they look at the dike not as a political decision, but as an engineering one. This is what we think this current dike can hold, and that's what we're going to hold it at. And if it tries to go over, we're going to release water, and it may have phosphates, and it's going to lead to algae blooms, but that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on engineering, period.
On January 30th, 2016, the Army Corps of Engineers opened the locks at Port Mayaca and Moorhaven.
I've been here nearly 20 years. I've seen a lot of events like this. I hope you can hear me because it's deafening down here.
Mike Connor is a fishing guide and environmental activist in Stewart, Florida, and immediately realized the impact the Corps' decision could have. He took this video standing near one of the locks along the St. Lucie River.
You're looking at 4.7 billion gallons of nutrient-laden polluted water coming from Lake Okeechobee and other ag lands west of our county and north of the lake. This is decimating the St. Lucie River estuary and the lower Indian River Lagoon. This may be the death knell of our estuary. Our elected officials need to move on this. It's been 20 years of promises. We need help right now.
For more than 250 days, the Corps kept the floodgates open, releasing 826 billion gallons of water from Lake Okeechobee. How much water is that? Enough that if you could contain the water inside the boundaries of the 55 square miles that make up the city of Miami, the water would rise almost 71 feet. Not long after Connor's video plea, the Treasure Coast algae crisis began.
This thick, putrid algae, just the sight of this algae is enough to make many people nauseous.
All that lake water that had the algae coming down, we tracked it down the C-44 canal, which is, 25-mile canal. When it got in our estuary, it's packed. It's packed into boat basins, into dead-end canals, residential canals, and it went like this. It came from the lake. It came from the lake. We don't get toxic algal blooms or even any blue-green algal blooms here in our estuary. unless we have LACO discharges.
Beaches closed while shops and restaurants throughout the area were devastated. The governor declared a state of emergency, and the federal government opened a center to offer low-interest loans to area businesses.
I'm not sure how businesses are going to keep it going right now.
Jordan Schwartz, who owns the Ohana Surf Shop in Stewart, believed he knew exactly where to place the blame.
We know where the money comes in the politicians' pockets, and to think that there's an industry out there that is causing this pollution that no one is going to do anything about because they've been paid.
For Schwartz and others, that industry is Big Sugar, which has long been blamed by environmentalists for polluting the Everglades and even Lake Okeechobee. For decades, phosphorus-laden water from sugar fields and farms, as well as the neighboring towns, was backpumped into Lake Okeechobee. So while Big Sugar has contributed to polluting the lake, it remains relatively small compared to the phosphorus pouring in from the north. But because Big Sugar makes an easy target, the algae crisis became an opportunity for environmentalists to place an old foe on the defensive. They set their sights on the two largest sugar operations in the country, U.S. Sugar and Florida Crystals, who control nearly 400,000 acres of sugarcane fields stretching from Pahokee to Clewiston in an area known as the Everglades agricultural area. 2 million tons of sugar a year come out of the Everglades.
The history of the industry is appalling.
Carl Hiaasen has been one of the loudest critics of the sugar industry. It is a frequent target of his columns, and the villains in his novel Striptease are caricatures of Alfie and Pepe Von Hool, the Cuban-born brothers who run Florida Crystals.
I mean, it was an industry built on the backs of immigrant labor and basically indentured servitude for years. It was a brutal atmosphere. It basically owned people and ran them till they couldn't work anymore.
Every year, the farmers try to recruit American labor, but there are few takers. The job is simply too demanding. Muscles ache, sweat burns the eyes, and untrained hands blister in minutes. But to watch a West Indian wield his knife is to see a century-old art.
That was cleaned up only by virtue of a number of lawsuits, exposés. They were basically shamed into stopping treating human beings that way. So what happened next? They mechanized. They got rid of a lot of the migrant labor and they mechanized. And we're supposed to applaud them because they're not as abusive as they once were.
This wasn't the first algae bloom to hit the Treasure Coast. Lake Okeechobee discharges led to major blooms in 2006 and 2013. But there was one difference. This time, the algae bloom was in the hometown of the incoming president of the Florida Senate.
The Senate will be in order.
It really is something that you have to see and smell to take in.
As Senate President, Joe Negron would have enormous power during the upcoming legislative session in Tallahassee.
I've never seen the ocean shut down based on an environmental issue that was man-made. And we literally had signs at the beach that you couldn't swim. So it had a very devastating effect on canceling of hotel stays, of fishing tournaments, and that doesn't even get into the smell, the putrid nature of the entire community being turned into a cesspool.
On August 9, 2016, Negron held a press conference to announce his solution to the algae problem. He did it in just 5 words.
We must buy land south.
Negron's idea turned into Senate Bill 10, which called for spending $2.4 billion to buy 60,000 acres of land south of Lake Okeechobee, land that is currently being used by sugarcane growers and vegetable farmers. The land would be turned into a reservoir where polluted Lake O water could be sent. So instead of flushing that water east towards Stewart, where it would become an algae bloom, it would be delivered south to this new reservoir.
The lake needs an outlet to send water south. It needs a relief valve, because right now the only option for the Army Corps of Engineers is to open the gates on the east and west side of Okeechobee, and they blast out billions of gallons of polluted water. We have spent almost $3 billion, taxpayer money, to create kidneys for the Everglades, man-made wetlands that effectively remove the phosphorus and nitrogen, the pollutants of the water, so that we can deliver clean, fresh water through the Everglades and ultimately down to the Florida Keys.
Even though the 60,000 acres represents less than 10% of the total Everglades agricultural area, the sugar companies believe it represents another land grab by environmentalists targeting their industry.
What do you think the ultimate goal of the environmental community is?
It's to eliminate agriculture, without a doubt.
The algae bloom gave environmentalists the club they needed against Big Sugar.
At the end of the day, did you just have the bad luck of having an algae bloom created in the district of the incoming Senate president?
It wasn't our luck. I would say that the bad luck were the people who had to deal with the algae bloom.
It became your bad luck in that Senate president then introduces a bill to take land from your farmers. I mean, if it wasn't for, I mean, if it was almost any other district, if Joe Negron was not the incoming Senate president who made this his #1 priority, you wouldn't have had to spend as much time as you did trying to battle back this bill in Tallahassee.
Well, the algae bloom happened where the algae bloom happened. If someone made political hay out of that, you'd have to talk to them about that.
Do you think the Senate president made political hay out of it?
You might want to talk to the Senate president.
Well, you know whose view I'm really concerned about? The 500,000 men and women in District 25 that I represent. And my obligation is to them. My obligation is to the entire state.
Here, gator, 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 gator.
Marshall Jones grew up in the Everglades. His great-grandfather started this fishing camp in 1932.
The Everglades has sustained my family for 5 generations. Growing up as a boy, the Everglades was my playground. I'm a family man. I have 4 amazing children, and I want them to see the same Everglades as I grew up with, or better.
If the start of 2016 had heavier than expected rains, the start of 2017 saw the Glades facing a drought.
When that happens, the vast majority of the wildlife here dies. They have nothing left to feed on, and there's nothing left for them to survive in.
Jones took us to a spot where gators and fish were able to find water, and it is not just the wildlife that's affected.
If there's no standing water within the river of grass, the aquifer is not being replenished.
In other words, we can endanger our own drinking water, because if there isn't fresh water filling the aquifer, then salt water from the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico will push its way in, not only killing the seagrass and fish nurseries in Florida Bay, but eventually winding up in the aquifer.
When that happens, we have a major problem. The water can't be used for regular tap water, and it can also no longer be used to water lawns or water our fields to the south here in Homestead and the Redlands.
So while environmentalists believe Senate Bill 10 served the greater good of saving the Everglades, Big Sugar considered it a declaration of war.
How many lobbyists did you have on that bill?
We had a few.
You had a lot. You had a lot. Why so many lobbyists?
When somebody's trying to put you out of business, you're going to try to stay in business, and you're going to put, the resources that are necessary to make that happen. The Everglades Foundation had a number of lobbyists in Tallahassee, and they were trying to take our land. They were trying to take land of our neighbors and farmers and devastate our communities.
The United States Sugar Company had 28 registered lobbyists in Tallahassee for the 2017 session, and Florida Crystals, an additional 30 lobbyists.
In the past 20 years, we have given up more than 100,000 acres, 100,000 acres of some of the most fertile agricultural land in the country. The result of that was a closure of 3 mills. Losing another 60,000 acres in this region would require the closure of another mill. So you're talking about thousands of jobs, direct and indirect.
Lobbyists aren't the only reason Big Sugar is so powerful. Last year, an analysis by the Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times found that between 1994 and 2016, the sugar industry donated $57.8 million in direct and in-kind contributions to state and local political campaigns.
You spend a lot of money on campaign contributions, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
And how much influence does all that money buy you?
0.
Come on, really?
0.
It doesn't buy you any influence?
None at all. I mean, you'd be surprised how many times we get a phone call saying, sorry, but we can't help you.
If people are naive enough to think that that doesn't buy you access or influence, then you pretty much deserve the government you get, because that's what it's all about. It's all about buying votes. and buying the support of politicians, and it's always been that way.
Time and again, the sugar industry has found politicians willing to loosen regulations and ease water quality standards. For example, 7 years passed before the legislature enforced an amendment requiring Big Sugar to pay its share of the billions it would take to clean up the Everglades. Even still, sugar's contribution would be capped at a mere $25 an acre, or about $13 million a year. This time, however, the momentum appeared to be moving against Big Sugar. The blue-green algae was seeping into the public consciousness, requiring the legislature to act. And here is the irony. While it looked like Big Sugar was finally going to be held accountable for decades of perceived sins, there is a good case to be made that when it came to this particular algae crisis, Big Sugar was right. They were being turned into the scapegoats.
The water that goes into the end of River Lagoon has never been on a sugar farm.
It is a sad state of affairs when we take what was a very real environmental issue at Lake Okeechobee in the St. Lucie and try to turn it into a political weapon, and that was what was done.
The sugar industry came to the Everglades in the 1890s for one reason: the soil. That deep, black earth farmers call the muck. There is nothing quite like it anywhere in the world. It consists of the decomposed sawgrass and cattails, mangroves and pine trees, and whatever else has died in the swamps since the Everglades were first formed more than 4,000 years ago. A foot of muck, 12 inches of soil, can take nature 500 years to create. Thanks to these conditions, a single 8-foot stalk of sugarcane can produce 3 pounds of sugar.
To our facility here at Okeechobee right now, we're processing 26,000 tons of sugarcane per day. Okay, we recover about 3,000 tons of sugar every day from that sugarcane that we grind.
Sugarcane farming today is a mix of the old and new. Satellite images are now used to monitor the crops. When the time is right, fire begins the ritual. Burning off the leaves and leaving the stalk behind. That cane is then collected by GPS-guided harvesters. Gone are the days when thousands of machete-wielding migrants from the Caribbean would cut the cane by hand. At the mill, the cane is shredded, washed, and ground under rollers to squeeze out the sucrose. That juice is boiled and then distilled down into sugar granules and delivered to the packing plant, which during the harvest operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
We probably have 60 to 70% of employees that are from the Belglade, Clewiston area, so we're really supporting the community and the area with jobs.
Florida Crystals generated $4 billion in revenue last year. They have 2,000 employees in Florida and 20,000 worldwide.
We're the largest sugar refiner in the world. We have the ability to refine 6 million tons per year.
In addition to the tens of millions Big Sugar spends on the state and local level, their spending and political clout on the federal level is well established. Overall, as an industry, Big Sugar in the 2016 election cycle made $8 million in campaign contributions to federal candidates and political action committees, and spent another $21 million on federal lobbyists.
Companies do not spend that kind of money without expecting some kind of return on investment.
During the 2016 presidential election, Alfie Fanjul held a fundraiser for Democrat Hillary Clinton, while Pepe Fanjul hosted one for Donald Trump. And the industry's #1 goal? Maintaining the federal policies that greatly benefit their bottom line. Congress guarantees the price for a pound of sugar will never drop below a certain threshold, provides Big Sugar with low-interest loans, and severely limits the amount of sugar other countries can sell in the United States.
This is money that is being spent to shape U.S. policy. It affects all of us in how much we spend.
As the 2017 legislative session got underway, the Treasure Coast algae crisis reverberated through the halls of Tallahassee. 5 months earlier, Senate President Joe Negron said he would push to buy farmland south of Lake Okeechobee. Now, the state Senate held a series of meetings to listen to those both in support and against the proposal.
The damage that has been done to the St. Lucie River and the Southern Indian River Lagoon is beyond comprehension. In fact, it's criminal.
I myself had to close my business.
What I can tell you
is when the gates open, the river dies.
My church has been baptizing in that river for 105 years. I am the distinct pastor would be the first one who is not allowed to do this.
One after another, people from as far away as Isle Morada got up to talk about the impact the blue-green algae had on their lives.
I actually left with my kids and went to Cincinnati to families because you couldn't walk outside of our house without gagging. It smelled so bad. She has breathing issues, and I was just afraid to have my daughter there. So that's one of the reasons that this needs to be resolved. Thank you.
We know that toxins and blue-green algae can be absorbed in your bloodstream and give you internal problems.
Dr. Stephen Parr is the Director of Emergency Medicine for Martin Health Systems, which runs 3 hospitals in the Treasure Coast.
We know there are ongoing studies examining the relationship between cyanobacteria toxin, blue-green algae toxin, and neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's, ALS, and Parkinson's disease. Since hydrogen sulfide impairs the body's ability to use oxygen, individuals with underlying heart and lung disease are at greater risk of having heart attacks. We had a 50% increase in heart attacks from 2015 to 2016. That's pretty strong, at least circumstantial evidence.
Emotions were just as high among those from the Glades communities.
I can't live with taking up jobs of people who, that's the only way they know how to live, and that's just to work the farmland and provide for this nation.
Buying that land will not solve the problem that we have before us. So when you're considering all these things, we want you to remember there are people, not fish, not grass, and not another thing, but there are people that live in these communities that you're talking about.
I can't for the life of me understand why any member, let alone the Senate president, would be pushing for a bill that would cause so much economic devastation.
If this bill goes through, you will be putting a knife into all the communities on the south end of Lake Okeechobee.
While all the focus has been on Big Sugar, the Everglades Agricultural Area, or EAA, has always been much more than just sugarcane growers.
My name is John Lloyd Hunley. My family owns Hunley Farms in the EAA. We've been farming there since my parents came in 1935.
Hunley Farms grows corn, green beans, and other vegetables. And if you want to get a sense of where Hunley's farmland sits, go back to Senator Joe Negron's August press conference and look at the red circles on his map, where he said he wanted to build a reservoir. Hunley's farm sits inside those circles.
We are not willing sellers to a governmental entity.
We caught up with Hunley's son on their farm in Belglade soon after the hearing.
Farming's in my blood. It's what I get up every morning excited about. I don't know anything else. I just like to feed people.
The Everglades is the winter vegetable capital of the country. Between November and the end of May, if you ate an ear of corn anywhere in the United States, there is a better than 90% chance it was grown here. Nearly all of the lettuce consumed east of the Mississippi is grown in the Everglades. Hunley showed us one of his green bean fields that he leases from Florida Crystals.
Just a couple of weeks ago, this was in sugarcane.
So this was all sugarcane just 2 weeks ago?
Just 2 weeks ago. It's been rotated out, and this is part of the rotational program where we put vegetables in behind that, and rice will be planted in behind the vegetables. So this soil is being conditioned and being preserved over a course of 365 days with multiple different types of crops.
On a daily basis, we have anywhere from 10 to 15 different harvest crews. Each crew can be up to 30 people per crew. Most of the labor tends to be Hispanic. We do have some Haitian employees also.
Stephen Besor and his brothers own TKM Farms, the largest lettuce grower this side of the Mississippi. He also made the trip to Tallahassee.
This land grab is not only a job killer, it's a community killer, and it's an industry killer.
Our business is growing, but as this land is being taken away, it gets harder for us to continue to expand. But we're also concerned that our land may be taken away and we possibly just go away.
Now, Edward R. Murrow. This is CBS Reports. Harvest of Shame. It has to do with the men, women, and children who harvest the crops in this country of ours, the best-fed nation on earth.
In 1960, Edward R. Murrow presented his groundbreaking documentary on the country's migrant farm workers.
These are the forgotten people, the underprotected, the undereducated, the underclothed, the underfed.
The documentary opened right here.
This is Belgrade, Florida, where the Exodus has its beginning every year.
And it took you inside a daily ritual few had seen.
7 cents, heavy yesterday, 70 cents today, 70 cents all day jumping.
This is a shape-up for migrant workers.
Picking all day long.
The hawkers are chanting the going peace rate at the various fields.
What we got to pull today, you have $11 in your pocket.
And here is the loading ramp today. Little has changed in the 57 years since Murrow's crew visited this site, and by 4 a.m., the loading ramp was full of buses and people.
It's not hard work, really, but it's just quick cash put in your pocket. Yeah, a little fast money, it's a little hustle. That's all it is. Nothing major.
How long have you been out here?
I've been doing this since 2008.
We followed as one busload of workers made it out to the field an hour before sunrise to begin unloading their equipment under a full moon. Typically, a person could make $100 a day. With the high unemployment in the area, we found more locals willing to work in the fields.
Get some money. Yeah. Ain't enough.
Jazz just turned 18. This was going to be her first day in the field.
I was raised in born here.
What's it like living in Belgrade?
Good, actually. It teaches you a lot. It make you strive for better. You know, for the highest. Whatever you can put your mind to, if you were raised up, you do anything you want to do. Cause this is a stepping ground. You know?
The area is also known as a stepping ground for top-flight NFL players. More than 50 have emerged from the muck and played in the NFL, including Super Bowl MVP Santonio Holmes, Pro Bowl running back Fred Taylor, and the 2015 Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year, Anquan Boldin.
It's a place with not a lot of opportunity, but we make the most out of what we have. The amount of talent that is here is unbelievable. And like I said, I'm not just talking about sports.
Boldin's foundation raises money for the community.
We always consider this the forgotten part of Palm Beach County. And that's why I'm here, because people out here, they need help. They deserve opportunities.
More than a third of the population in Belgrade, Pahokee, and South Bay live below the poverty line. The unemployment rate is nearly 5 times higher than the state average. And in 2016, Belgrade had a murder rate 4 times higher than the city of Miami.
So if they end up coming in and taking a large block of farmland out of service, what's it going to do to an area like this?
These are the people that will be impacted if they are successful in this potential land grab. So you see what it looks like now. Just imagine this 10 times more than what it is. These people depend on farming for a living, and if you're talking about taking what they know away from them, we would have major, major problems economically as well as socially here in this particular community.
We drove a few blocks from the loading ramp so Jackson Moore could show us what was once downtown Belgrade.
At one time, all of these buildings contain a business, several businesses, dress shops, hardware stores, and now you see all of it is closed up. So this area is struggling financially, economically, and we're trying to build and bring back some businesses to this particular community, but it's extremely hard when there's all this conversation about this potential land grab and how we're going to be losing 4,000 jobs. So how can a business say, I'm going to come and invest in your community when people are going to be without work and they're not going to be able to support the business?
Every shuttered storefront offers a different tale of lost hope.
I was here for 8 years.
You were in this was yours?
Yeah, the wheat store.
What store?
The wheat store. That was me.
Yeah.
The news gets worse. The day before, the banks foreclosed on his home, and he had to move out.
Now I even lost my house.
You did? You lost your house?
Those who still have businesses on the block wonder how long they can last.
There's no income, there's no money circulating in the area.
So what if they take that 60,000 acres more and more
Things
jobs
are gonna get worse. More break-ins, more shooting, more robberies gonna happen. And that's what's all that. Before I tell you the truth, I mean, that's how it is here. We need jobs.
He's a great God, say he's a great God. He's a great God. I mean, know that he's great. Say he's a great God. He's a great God. He's a great God.
10 years ago, the Easter service at the St. John Missionary Baptist Church in Belgrade would have been packed. This year's service saw the church half empty.
I would say
close to 100 of members have moved to the coast for jobs.
Pastor Robert Reese leads the church and is a member of the local ministerial alliance. He grew up in Belgrade.
It is the forgotten part, and again, I said that all the time.
While the emotions and fears expressed by Glades residents were real, they also offered Big Sugar an opportunity to deflect attention away from themselves. Rather than a battle pitting good-hearted environmentalists against billion-dollar sugar companies, it could be seen instead as a fight between those who live along the Tony Treasure Coast versus those in struggling minority communities.
Do you provide financial support to them?
We don't.
You didn't provide any in-kind support?
Did I tell those people my prayers and support were with them? The whole community did.
Did you provide any of the transportation?
We did not provide transportation.
Did you help set up meetings for them with lawmakers?
They set up their own meetings. It is offensive to me as a resident of the Glades for people to think that the people in our communities are not capable of going and speaking to their legislators. They're not capable of traveling to Tallahassee on their own without somebody making some big arrangement for them. That's just condescending of whoever's making those accusations.
Tammy Jackson Moore says her group, Guardians of the Glades, has received limited help from sugar companies, notably Florida Crystals.
We do have some support from the sugar industry.
While sugar does not provide them cash, they have helped print materials. She said other business interests, who she declined to identify, arranged travel for folks from the Glades to go to Tallahassee. And she said they received help getting meetings with legislators.
What is great that they have done for us is allowed us an opportunity to meet their people that they associate with on a daily basis. They've been able to open that door for us, and it's been a very, very good relationship thus far.
So do we feel used? No, because again, these are our jobs. And if we lose those jobs, we have no jobs.
Big Sugar isn't the only one playing politics. The driving force behind Negron's proposal is the Everglades Foundation, which has been accused of using this fight to help it raise money.
Hooey, as they say. Not true. We don't profit off of this. We don't profit off of restored Everglades.
But Eric Eichenberg and the Everglades Foundation are not political novices and wield their own clout in Tallahassee. The group's founder and largest financial supporter is Paul Tudor Jones, a billionaire hedge fund manager. The state's various environmental groups employ a small army of lobbyists as well, with 8 registered to the Everglades Foundation alone.
People are frustrated, they're angry, they want a solution.
And for Eichenberg, that solution remains. Send the water from Lake Okeechobee south. Getting that water flow right has been the defining question behind Everglades restoration for decades. It was 70 years ago, in 1947, that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas published her seminal work, The Everglades, River of Grass. In 1989, ABC News made her their Person of the Week, noting she was still working to save the Everglades at the age of 98.
I think the future of the Everglades is something that we've all got to work for. We've got to guarantee that the Kissimmee-Okeechobee Everglades Basin is maintained. Otherwise, the whole country will go to the dickens.
Douglas, who lived to be 108, wasn't alone in redefining the public's view of the Everglades. In 1956, Sports Illustrated devoted the cover and a series of color photos to the birds of the Everglades. And for the last 40 years, Clyde Butcher's black and white photographs have spread the beauty of the Everglades around the world. As the public's view of the Everglades evolved, so did the actions of politicians.
We knew that there was going to be a lot of land acquisition required to save the Everglades, and our first goal was to develop a buffer zone around the Everglades to reduce the amount of development which had been impinging on the Everglades.
Buying and controlling land has always been seen as the key to protecting the Everglades. And as Senate President Negron would discover, it is also the most contentious. The 2016 algae crisis highlighted another reality: the slow pace of Everglades restoration. What started under Bob Graham in the 70s is still taking place today.
I grew up hunting and fishing and camping in the Everglades.
While serving in the state legislature between 1980 and 1988, Dexter Layton made saving the Everglades one of his highest priorities, drafting new anti-pollution laws with his staff. And that's when they came to a troubling discovery.
And we came to the conclusion that the laws are already there. The real problem was that they weren't being enforced. I was shocked, really, to find the ease with which regulatory agencies can simply ignore the law. There's no consequence to their ignoring the law, usually, so they just ignore it.
Historically, there have been various special interests responsible for keeping the state from enforcing the laws, Layton said, including Big Sugar.
Sugar is a cause, the biggest cause, not the only, but no private enterprise is going to increase its cost of production unless the government imposes regulations. So the real bogeyman is the government and the Water Management District for not doing its job.
In 1988, President Ronald Reagan appointed Layton the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Layton now had the clout to do something about the Everglades. He began drafting a lawsuit against the state of Florida for failing to enforce its own laws. The state's negligence, he would argue, allowed federal lands, including Everglades National Park, to become polluted. Worried about political interference from Big Sugar, Layton said he kept his plans a secret from his bosses in Washington.
And when I filed in early October, I got an immediate call and ordered to come immediately to the Justice Department.
Layton flew to Washington, where he said he was hauled into a large conference room filled with Justice Department officials.
So I went into the meeting and they said, withdraw the lawsuit. You know, I got wounded in Vietnam, and there's no heroic message there except that, you know, I've been to the mountaintop, and a bunch of subordinate people in the Justice Department don't exactly overly impress me. And I said, well, look, I know one thing. The president can order me to withdraw it, and probably the Attorney General, although the laws are not clear about that. But I know this about you guys in this room. None of you have the authority to order me to withdraw the lawsuit. So I'll tell you what I'll do. You get the president or the Attorney General to order it withdrawn in writing, and I'll withdraw it. But I recommend that you talk to the vice president first, because he's beating up, those exact phrases, he's beating up in TV ads. Go home, watch a TV ad. Michael Dukakis is letting Boston Harbor be polluted, while you are ordering, he as vice president, are ordering a pollution lawsuit to save the Everglades to be withdrawn.
Layton's threat worked, and Washington backed down.
That I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Perform the duties.
Perform the duties.
Of governor.
Of governor.
In 1991, Lawton Chiles was sworn in as governor and made a surprise appearance in federal court for one of the hearings on the lawsuit.
He goes to the podium and he says that they're willing to negotiate. Who do I give my sword to?
That line, "Who do I give my sword to?" signaled the state was surrendering. Since that day in 1991, that sword has been held by a series of federal judges who enforce a settlement that would drastically lower the amount of phosphorus reaching Everglades National Park.
But we're cleaning every drop of water that comes on the farm.
In 1994, the state passed the Everglades Forever Act, requiring farmers to reduce the amount of phosphorus coming off their farms by 25%.
The Everglades have been saved. What they should be doing is having a celebration of the incredible success story of what Everglades restoration has been.
The water coming off those fields is cleaner than it was 25, 30 years ago, certainly than when I was a kid. But they've been dragged kicking and screaming into every reform that they've had to do. Without oversight, without the federal government in particular, it'd still be just as bad as it ever was.
What is harder, restoring the Everglades or the politics of restoring the Everglades?
Well, you got to get through the politics to get to the restoration.
Jeb Bush learned this when he ran for governor in 1994 and narrowly lost to Chiles. You were seen as a developer.
Yeah.
What made you decide that the Everglades was something? Because you didn't have a history.
No, that's right. You know, in the '98 campaign, I did a lot of wandering around. I did a lot of listening, and this was an issue that came up a lot. And my attitude about this was, I'm kind of nerdy about these things. I got into office. I'm not a engineer. I wasn't a civil engineer or hydrologist or anything, but I learned about this stuff. And there are solutions to the challenges that we face. These fights, when it gets into the political realm, where politicians get in front of cameras and have photo ops. I mean, I did a lot of them. They're beautiful. You go out in the Everglades, great pictures, panoramic views of sawgrass. What I'm proud of was the fact that we tried to build consensus between groups. And some of these photo ops that we had were people that never spoke to one another, except when they came for that bill signing.
In December of 2000, Bush helped forge a landmark agreement with Congress and the White House known as the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, or CERP, which committed $4 billion to cleaning up and restoring the Everglades. The bill was signed in the Oval Office with President Bill Clinton, and it occurred on the same day the Supreme Court ended the recount in Florida, thereby ensuring George Bush would be the next president of the United States.
It was pretty amazing. Then I walked out, and of course, no one wanted to talk about CERP. They wanted to talk about the election.
When you had Bush and Clinton and everybody pushing, it wasn't that, oh, let's go save the alligators, or let's go save the dusky seaside sparrow. They didn't give a rat's ass about that. What got their attention was the crimp that it would put in the machinery of development. If you can't turn on a faucet and expect clean water, you got a problem selling a subdivision then, don't you? You got a problem opening a business. You got a problem starting a municipality. That's what got their attention. It was the money, and it's always been that way.
The plan called for a 50-50 partnership in paying for the restoration with the federal government.
It didn't work out that way, which is disappointing.
Despite his brother being president, the federal government failed to fund their side of the deal.
Was he pushing well enough for it?
In Washington, he was supportive, but Congress didn't deliver, and so you can blame whoever you want on that. I'm not in the blame game here.
Rather than wait for the federal government to put up its share, Bush pushed the legislature to start spending money immediately. They laid out a complex matrix of plans and dates, but when Charlie Crist came into office in 2006, everything ground to a halt. Crist had his own plan.
And kind of came up with the idea from The River of Grass, the book. The only way we're going to be able to protect it, she said, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, is to buy it. It's in the book. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, so it's probably not a perfect quote, but close enough.
You're talking about the U.S. sugar deal, is what you're referring to?
I am, yes, sir.
I can envision no better gift to the Everglades, the people of Florida, and the people of America as well as our planet than to place in public ownership this missing link that represents the key to true restoration.
In 2008, with the Everglades as his backdrop, Crist announced plans to spend $2.5 billion to buy U.S. Sugar's land, its mills, and its buildings.
Governor Crist had the vision to look a little more deeply than the prior four governors and to see this problem as needing a more fundamental, systemic solution. And more importantly than that vision, though, he had the courage to act on it.
Look, U.S. Sugar wanted to bail out, but Charlie Crist did this for political purposes rather than for the Everglades.
Whose idea was it? Was it you approaching them, or did they approach the government?
It was in concert, and it really doesn't matter. The good thing is it happened. God created it. We call him the creator. And so, what better way to try to get back to how it's supposed to have been utilized for filtering the water, having the water flow south, than the way God did it in the first place.
U.S. Sugar says it was Crist's idea.
Governor Charlie Crist had a grand vision to buy everything that we had, including the pastrami sandwich half eaten in the refrigerator. He was having his eye on a Senate seat at the time.
After the recession hit in 2009, the state scaled back its plans, buying only 27,000 acres. In 2010, Crist lost that race for Senate. But more importantly, the restoration plans, which had been stalled for 4 years, now had to be restarted.
That path should have been kept, and had it been kept, we would be on the second phase of this. And that's the tragedy, is that it delayed all of this for a photo op.
He's my judge now. All I was trying to do was, as I said earlier, do what God intended for that part of our state that I love. And if that's a bad thing and politically motivated, my friend Mr. Bush is wrong.
And as Bush blames Crist, Chris now blames his successor, Rick Scott.
But there'll be a successor to him soon, and maybe we can get back at it again.
The people of Florida elected me to get this state back to work, and I believe in this mission.
When Rick Scott came into office, he slashed the budget for the South Florida Water Management District, eliminating more than 300 positions, including researchers and scientists. Governor Scott declined our request for an interview.
Government is basically toothless, and they're actually, in the case of the Water Management District, acting as a mouthpiece for the industries they're supposed to be monitoring.
When Scott first ran for governor, he attacked his Republican primary opponent for taking money from the sugar industry.
He was blasting him for taking Big Sugar's money. And now no one gets more than Rick Scott.
As Senate Bill 10 moved through the legislature, Senate President Joe Negron was feeling the heat. The heightened focus on minority communities south of the lake appeared to be working. Black legislators began rallying against the bill. Negron even found opposition from Senator Marco Rubio, who said the plan could endanger funding for other Everglades projects.
I think we need to, if we don't focus on one thing at a time, we'll get nothing.
Halfway through the session, Negron rewrote Senate Bill 10, scaling back the price and abandoning his call for 60,000 acres of farmland. Instead, he would use existing state-owned land.
You had to change the footprint because sugar was overwhelmingly against you. And it's hard to go against sugar, isn't it, in Florida?
Well, it's hard to get southern storage. It's hard to do anything that's going to affect agriculture. And if this was easy, I wouldn't have taken it on. It would have already been done.
Negron's bill also failed to address the problem of septic tanks.
How can you say that's not a major factor?
It is an exacerbating factor, but make no mistake about it. The algae bloom was not caused by septic tanks. It wasn't caused by anything other than a massive, continuous, day after day, 24 hours a day discharge of billions of gallons of phosphorus and nitrogen-laden water into our community.
In May, the Senate and the House approved the new version of Negron's bill.
You know, history will record that this legislature finally took on that very, very difficult issue.
And somehow lost along the way during this legislative session the very issue that created last year's toxic algae crisis, the contamination of Lake Okeechobee.
You have big agriculture interests to the north of the lake that never seem to be targeted, you know, like the sugar guys.
So there has to be more debate about what we're doing north of the lake.
More than 500 tons of phosphorus pouring into the lake every year from the north, and little being done about it.
If in fact there is a hurricane of significant proportions, there are going to be a lot of people whose lives are destroyed because that dike may breach. It is that dangerous. Let's go ahead and let's fix the damn dike.
That you can do as a legislative body is you can bring back septic tank inspections. They were taken away and the realtors supported it and the chamber supported it, and it was supposedly bad for business. Well, what else it was bad for was bad for our environment.
Watch this blue-green algae sink to the bottom and form a muck on the bottom of the river. What are the long-term consequences of that? What is the effect 10 years from now? No one knows. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be good.
Things are going to get better. Things are going to get better. and I'm looking forward to that day.